So the Diablo 4 story was, in our opinion, one of the best the franchise ever had.
For sure.
Sure, it was kind of dragged on in some areas, but I feel like they could have like done it a lot more bombastic. But you do get that sense of, okay, they did this story to be able to like make even more reveals and even more wow moments further on to the franchise. You know, new expansions, seasons, and whatnot. It wasn't like a complete rounded up story. It definitely left room for a lot of questions, a lot of like maybe speculations, and I see a lot of people asking, where the hell is Diablo in a Diablo game?
Yeah, I know that always surprised me because it's interesting to think of how they're doing Diablo's story with the Diablo being the title character, and we kind of always killed Diablo in the first version of the game, and then we have expansions. And it just feels weird. It's like, well, we killed Diablo, we're playing Diablo. Why Reaper of Souls? Why Lord of Destruction? Why isn't Diablo like the final boss? And maybe this time we're gonna have that, but I particularly, since I don't know how you, I can't, maybe I know a little bit how you feel about the primevals, but Diablo is my favorite primeval, and I feel like having a proper build up towards it into like this big moment, because Diablo is the Lord of Terror, right? It's supposed to put their terror into your, you know, the fight with it, the whole scale of the fight, and I think we haven't had that since Diablo 2. Diablo 3 was too bright, was too colorful. The vibe, the themes, like we were chasing Diablo down. Not to mention the design was a little bit off-putting, so it didn't inspire that core dread. That's horror. Because you think of Mephisto. Because I know
which
you like
is my
Mephisto.
favorite primeval.
But it's the primeval of hatred, and we've only obviously we've only had Mephisto so far, but I think they've done hatred really well to kind of depict it in a symbolistic manner into game and give us the feelings like, oh, this dude plays with people's hatred.
For sure. And by the way, we are going to get into spoiler territory, so if you did not finish the Diablo 4 campaign, we advise you to like, you know.
I mean, you're watching the story video.
Yeah.
Like
this is you would expect this, all right? So yeah, speaking about the theme of hatred and everything that was evolved around Mephisto's thing, you definitely felt that towards the end of the game, where people would start turning against each other. You would see like the cultists over there, like some of them actually mentioning Mephisto, which was very weird. Like really close to the end, you would see the cultists speak about, oh, our Lord Mephisto and blah blah blah. It was like very weird because that cult belonged to Elias, and Elias was with Lilith. So it's
Elias was just like against the primevals to begin with. Lilith was clearly against the primeval to begin with, and
this is the thing. And when you're talking about primevals, obviously Mephisto was like center stage. We didn't see it from the beginning. We kind of got the revelation that Mephisto was the pooch, the little wolfy wolf,
the wolfy dog. Yeah.
But listen, for those of us who like knew a couple of bits of lore, symbolism, and all that, we kind of almost knew that the dog was Mephisto. But regardless, in the actual gameplay and the story, you didn't really feel his presence. I think, you felt his presence at the beginning and close towards the end, but throughout, you didn't really like think about, okay, is this like a big ass scheme from Mephisto? Was this like how he planned everything out to be sure that the future event will take place? And this is where we get into the Diablo territory. Okay, where is Diablo?
It feels like some of these moments that we had with Mephisto felt like Lilith and Arius and everybody was playing at the daddy's table, and daddy was just like watching the back. It was like, you guys do what you want, but things are gonna go. And I think this is a way better way to build up the Mephisto, because I always come back to Diablo 2, where Mephisto, when I played it for the first time, obviously I was a kid, I didn't really know much, but it felt like they slapped Mephisto in my face. Like I didn't really care, I didn't really know. If it wasn't for the cinematics, we wouldn't really know exactly what the dude was about. But now we're actually getting built up. Now we're actually getting, it's like, oh shit, oh, getting close, oh. And that feeling of anticipation, and obviously with hopefully the culmination of whatever the story is going to be. If obviously we're gonna fight Mephisto, I would imagine at one point, because it would be cool.
We will fight all the primevals once again. This is my speculation, because if you look at how the ending went, it's a very nice throwback to how Diablo 2 basically continued from Diablo 1.
Yeah.
You have like you had the Wanderer who would like basically went off with his like burden of having Diablo in this Soul Stone, and it slowly like got to him, and he was transformed eventually into Diablo. But all that was like always traveling to the east to like free up all of the other brothers so they can like make it happen. Very similar start to the ending of Diablo 4, where you have Nerel walking off with a soul stone with Mephisto's essence
Avatar,
in there.
I guess.
Yeah, it's in there. And they're going to west, right? They're going to Kurast, I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken. So they're going towards that. Well, we see her journey a little bit, but then when we see the cutscene where she's on the boat with the nice little pooch over there, it's basically going to west. So in Diablo 2, it was east. Now we're looking at west again. A traveler has a soul stone with her, and it's different, right? The Lord of Terror had this history of corrupting everything where he was, right? We don't know how Mephisto operates on that matter, right? We know it will inflict hatred among people who like stand near or whatever, but it's gonna be interesting to see. So I feel that Diablo in Diablo 4 will eventually pop up after this journey that will be very similar to Diablo 2, but obviously much more
You
grounded.
won't think we have Baal before Diablo?
I think we will have.
We cannot have Baal as the last boss because although
we'll have Baal for sure.
They actually did Baal way better in Diablo 2 than any other primevals in terms of his personality and building the story up. Because I think by the point that they released Lord of Destruction, they already kind of knew what the story was going to be, since the initial story wasn't really planned properly.
Yeah. In Diablo 2, it was a little bit more planned than in Diablo 1. It was kind of slapped on. This is like for people who like know what happened back then. Diablo 2 was much more cohesive in that sense, where you definitely had the acts being kind of like linked up with some sort of like logical pathway or to. Okay, you didn't have a very good build-up for the other primevals, like you mentioned Mephisto, and that's totally right. You just met him over there, but it was something about him, especially from the cutscenes, that okay, this is interesting. And if you go into like the books that were released at the time, and books that were released after, Mephisto is the one that is like the most intelligent,
Isn't
the most
he the
scheming.
big brother of them all?
Yes, he's like the big manipulator, the guy who makes things happen. So it was very fitting to see him first here. I wasn't disappointed I didn't see Diablo in a Diablo game now.
No, neither
because
was I.
yeah, they did very well by Mephisto's like character and how it was depicted in the books. Like very very conniving, very scheming.
That's exactly it, man. Because one thing that's been kind of missing from the Diablo games, and I always felt, because I think it was pointed out way better into the books. As much as I read, I didn't read all of them. But the religious symbolism of good and evil, the aspects of evil, and so on. Like, how do you make me believe that this is the prime feeling of hatred? Like, how is this going to make me feel as a mortal interacting with this visceral feeling of hatred that's coming from the deepest depths of hell? Right, and I feel like they did that well in Diablo 4, as much as they're gonna do in a video game with this kind of like it's a pretty complicated concept to put into a story, but they're definitely building it up to feel like, okay, this is coming from the evilest places of the world. This is the hatred that men of humanity has in their hearts and has been prevalent in our entire history and so on. And that's cool. I want to know how they're going to manifest destruction into the world as a concept, because it's the motif of Baal, and of course last terror, because I feel like terror is such a cool thing to have in a.
This is I would argue to this that this is the most natural way of things going forward with the story. So you first have the hatred. The hatred will inflict into players, into NPCs, that feeling of going into conflict, doing bad things, which will eventually lead up to a destruction of your soul, of your integrity, of your beliefs, of your whatever, and it will obviously translate into more destruction onto the world you're going through, and so on and so forth, and that eventually leads into like absolute terror. So the terror will be like the last one, that you have the hatred amongst everybody and everything, you have the destruction that has taken place. What is there left to be up?
Is Daddy Diablo gonna come in? Num num.
Because this is the way I think. Again, speculation. This is the way I think they planned it out. Okay, they want to have like the biggest playground for terror to actually manifest. So you started off with hatred, you then go into destruction, you have both of these like really ramping up into people's souls and people's actions and whatever, and then that would be the perfect ground for terror to install. Because why and how are these primevals always coming back? This is a little...
that's the core concept, because they're never dying. So there's essentially endless material for Diablo games for like generations.
They were smart with that shit.
They just need to be able to make it interesting. I do have a conflicting opinion, and maybe you can share your thoughts on this, because there's one thing that Diablo 3 did well in the story, and that's including the angels a little bit more, the Injurious Council, going more into that side of the things, because we know the primevals. Although I am a big fan of the old folk style of telling stories where good is good and evil is evil, where, you know, in Diablo 2 we had the help of Tyrael, and whenever we saw Tyrael, it was like, oh my god,
it was clearly a good guy.
He represented good. Good was good all around, was almighty, and evil was all it was no shades of gray that much. It was like black and white, good and evil. And I kind of like that story because that's a more older style of telling stories. Obviously in the modern age we have a lot of shades of gray. And that was basically obvious in Diablo 3, where we had all of the, you know, Imperius was kind of like edgy, a little bit too edgy. Malthael obviously turned a little bit to the dark side, to nihilism and all of that stuff. But how do you feel like if they postpone the Diablo arc and put an Injurious Council arc between that, and Diablo just is the culmination of the story? Because that could be, you know, first expansion is Mephisto, second would be Baal, maybe third would be something with the angels, and last would be Diablo. It's probably going to be 10 years from now or whatever, but...
No, I think it's going to be much sooner than that, because my feeling is that they want to like evolve even further from like just battling the primeval. So the manifestation of the Injurious Council is an interesting one, because we know they're like closed off their gates. They're basically, there is no more purpose to their activity. They're not giving a F about anything. I feel the most appropriate.
It's a hard day.
The most appropriate setting would actually be the hatred, because if you're gonna go explore that, destruction has already been like in the high heavens after the events of Diablo 3. We already know that. So the whole spire is destroyed. Everything is like in shambles.
When the World Stone, I think that was the culmination of anything that the aspect of destruction could do. That was a big moment. We didn't even know how big that moment was going to be in Diablo 2 when it happened, but now retroactively, like, dude, they actually destroyed the World Stone.
Yeah, so this is what I'm saying. I don't think we're going to have the black and white thing. I think it's going to be a lot of like gray stuff, especially if they're going to play into the Injurious Council. We only saw like bits and pieces of Inarius, and his motif was basically, I want to go home, baby.
He felt like very broken by the end. His angelic side was kind of like very, very weak at the end.
And I think, listen, one interesting thing that I didn't see a lot of people talk about, how much he enjoyed and lavished into the fact that people created religions on his behalf.
Proud,
He was very. This is like, listen, this was like the only angel that I know who like really enjoyed that shit, and like he was like very much happy to be adulated in that capacity, which wasn't like the basis of his religion, the Cathedral of Light and all that. I mean, we all know now what he's done and how he was tortured, and basically his like conclusion in the Diablo 4 story. So it kind of renders that whole religion. Listen,
it's
guys,
very fanatical, and I think they did really well. And this is obviously another good thing that happened in Diablo 3 is they went a little bit more into the personalities of the angels, because the juxtaposition now is very clear. Inarius, by the end, you know, in the cinematic in his fight with Lilith was very broken. His angelic side was very diminished. He was very weak and wanted approval from the Injurious Council to be brought back home, but you didn't really see that. Every angel had that stoicism, that, I want to say valor, but valor is mostly like Imperius. Even Imperius still had his, I don't want to say pride, but his glory as an angel. You kind of feels like, okay, this dude is a little bit wacky, but he's still like admirable in a way. And so Malthael, even going depths into the depths of nihilism, it was a kind of a slight point to what he was doing and what he was saying, although we didn't agree. But with Inarius, I just felt sorry for him at the end. It's like he was broken. His mind was not already there. He saw the world to being something that wasn't actually.
There's also another theory about how we're gonna face off Diablo, because Diablo 4 doesn't mention at all Nephilim. And we all know at the end of the Reaper of Souls, the Nephilim became this super scion, you know, Giga Chad,
Yeah.
powerful, whatever.
Well, they were
And there
the
was-
first humans, right?
well, yes, but the heroes from Diablo 3, like after like defeating Malthael and that
Yeah.
story concluded, they ascended to becoming this like all-powerful being. And there's also the line of Tyrell, I believe, where it says, okay, will they use this power to like do good or just be even worse than the evils? And I feel this is, again, another good context because they didn't mention Nephilims at all in Diablo 4 so
you don't
far.
think they retconned them? Out of the story?
Some people say that. I'm still not convinced it's retcon. It could be the basis of something that will be translated into Diablo.
So one thing that Diablo, over the course of its games, did well is to not have this goody two shoes. This is always the good hero. They always succumb to corruption.
Yes.
Every hero succumbs, and I think that's probably better if the Nephilims, if our characters from Diablo 3 become like something that we have to fight. Because otherwise, then it's just an unstoppable force against the Primevals and the Dangerous Council, and it won't be that much of a high stakes for us to go into. It's like, oh, the Nephilim is just gonna solve all of our problems.
Yeah, I think like here is where Mephisto comes in once again. I can totally see, again, speculation. I totally see a world where the heroes of Diablo 3 are convinced by Mephisto that they should be the supreme rulers and leaders and should.
That would be so cool.
Yes, and that will go into conjunction with the most powerful primeval Diablo, which I can see either an alliance or some sort of like weird ass essence being formed on Diablo with the power of the Nephilims, and everything would be like giga super fantastic at the end. That you're gonna have like these beefed up primevals, the Nephilims who decided, okay, we're gonna rule everybody around, just make alliances with the primevals or whatever, and then some broken ass angels, some of them filled with hatred, some of them filled with revenge, some of them filled with remorse. It's gonna be like an all-out big battle, and of course our characters in the middle, which we don't know what they are as far as we know. Just like adventurers,
dudes and dudettes.
Yeah, dudes and dudettes like want to like they take part of whatever's happening in the world. But just circling back to the initial question, there's obviously a lot of like territory where you can go with the story of Diablo 4 on actually meeting Diablo. I just don't feel it's not going to be in 10 years. I think like because they mentioned through seasons, they're going to add stories as well. So I'm thinking that the second expansion will probably be a Diablo absolute like final showdown with Diablo. And then if they move forward with future expansions, I'm pretty sure they want to like evolve after this. And again, I'm bringing in the Nephilim bit here, not retconning. That can be a whole other avenue, right? Because again, it does. They always fear the Nephilims as they have both the power of the angels and the demons. And if at the end of Diablo 3 they went Super Saiyan and they like got super powerful, that would mean that they're like the biggest threat to the primevals and the Dangerous Council.
They didn't retcon them for sure.
Yeah, so this is what I'm saying. It can happen in the expansion number 2. Hell, it can happen in expansion number 1, man, if they really want to like push it. They could have like the story just moving on with Mephisto doing his plans and schemes and all of that, and then getting to Baal, releasing him, and having the whole layout there. It could happen in the first expansion. We don't know what their plans are like for the next 10 years story-wise, but my sense is, since they started off with Lilith and Denarius, my sense is they want to like go further than the whole, okay, this small circle primevals fight them, okay, at the end of the day, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So-
I kind of like the focus on other characters than just the same old 3 there and 4 the other way, and going into the Lilith and Denarius story. I feel like there's a lot of content that they can do. For instance, another spoiler, not really spoiler. I don't know if Rathma is necessarily dead because they kept talking about how Rathma achieved immortality, but they didn't specify what that means. What does immortality mean in the concept that Rathma achieved it? Is he actually dead? Because I feel like that's a major loss, since we didn't have Rathma as an NPC, as a source of content in any Diablo game over the years, and I think like that's a big miss. I don't think they actually killed him. I think he's gonna come back and
Judging by how we finally defeated Alias, right, which was immortal, right? We found that little, what was it, a finger or what or something?
Tall man's finger.
The tall man's
legendary
finger.
Diablo 3 for Witch Doctor.
So there must be something of Rathma somewhere that if he is indeed immortal, we haven't seen anything like that for Rathma, so we could possibly explore that.
I mean, it's so obvious because it would be silly that Elias had achieved a higher level of immortality than Rathma. That would be a little bit silly.
Yeah, it would be
Rathma
too
is
much.
like the oldest human.
For sure, for sure. But hey, listen, this discussion can go on for hours and hours. We're very curious what you think. Like, where would you see Diablo showing up in Diablo 4? Do you see like in the next expansion, or even like, I don't know, 3 or 4 expansions after? Do you see like Mephisto actually being the prime evil? Well, he's a prime evil, the prime last boss we're gonna encounter, and that's it. Then we're gonna move on from that point, and who knows where. Let us know in the comments, and let's kick off a nice speculation, discussion over here, because it's really cool. Since the story now in Diablo is much more, I would say, grounded and relatable and interesting, we could potentially see some very nice things happening.
For sure, for sure. Thank you for watching the video, and we'll catch you in the next one.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.